This is going to be Scott, who actually, I mean, if you ever want, the best way to get on this show, he hit them all. He's a CLP website subscriber, and he also submitted via Fastroll. The only thing he was missing is being a first-time submitter, new on CLP. But what's going on, Scott? How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate you taking my call.
So, Scott, where are you playing out of here today?
This hand is out of Black Hawk, Colorado at the Monarch.
Black Hawk, Colorado at the Monarch. What is the level that you are playing at?
Right. So this hand is 2, 5, 10, and we're 8-handed.
2, 5, 10, 8-handed, and how deep are you?
I am 2,400 effective with the main villain and 2,300 effective with the secondary villain.
Nice. And by the way, Scott submitted through the Fastroll app. If you're looking for a way to record your live hands so that you can share them or sort of create a database, so if you want to review them, Fastroll was, of course, developed by a couple of CLP subscribers, and it's the best app that I've seen for basically taking live hand notes, because online, obviously, you can do that automatically looking at your hand histories, but live, I've seen some apps come my way that haven't really been all that good, but Fastroll is the best one that I've seen that can do this. And once you get the hang of it, you can actually enter your hands as well. Scott submitted through that. And if you use the code BART, you will actually get a month for free or a month off their annual subscription. So do you use Fastroll a lot, Scott?
I actually just downloaded the app midweek last week, but I do like the interface. It takes a little bit of time, I think, to kind of get used to logging it. But I think
Right.
once I'm a little more used to the flow of the interface, it'll be really quick and honestly super useful.
Yeah, and I think once you get the hang of it I think there are some shortcuts and some tips in there about how to enter hands like really, really quickly, like some pre-saved templates and things like that. All right, so 2, 5, 10, 8-handed, 2,400 effective. Okay, start us off here.
Yeah, so a little bit of background on the villains. The button will be the primary villain in this hand. He is kind of what I classify as kind of an aggro reg, probably a weak reg, I would say.
Okay.
And the big blind, not the straddle, the middle blind, is the secondary villain. He's kind of a loose passive fish.
Okay.
So that kind of sets the hand up a little bit.
Okay, start us off here.
Yeah, so I'm in the +1, so to the left of the straddle, and I raised a 30 with King of Hearts, Jack of Spades.
So King of Hearts, Jack of Spades, 8-handed, +1 to 30, 3x. Some might say this is a little bit light. It's pretty close. I mean, I always open King Queen off in live games, especially obviously if it's 8-handed. A lot of games are 8-handed anyways, just because somebody's walking. King Jack off from up front. It's a little bit on the light side, but okay.
Yeah, I agree. It's a little bit on the light side. It's
Yep.
probably one pip wider than maybe standard might be, but this is a pretty passive table. And I think it's kind of a missed opportunity to not go ahead and open it.
Okay.
So folds around to the button, who is the kind of aggro weaker reg, and he calls.
Okay.
And the middle blind also calls. So there's 102 in the pot, and we're going to the flop.
And the middle guy's the one with the 2.3K, right?
That's correct.
All right, so I'm going to call it about $100 in the pot, 3 ways, call, single raise pot. Okay, King Jack off.
Right. So the flop is King of Spades,
Mm-hmm.
6 of Hearts, 4 of Clubs.
King 6, 4, no flush draw, right?
Correct.
Yeah, King 6, 4, rainbow. And sometimes I give this example, although with King Jack, it's probably pretty close. Sometimes on a non-draw heavy board where in the preflop raiser and I flop a weak top pair, I always give the example like maybe like King 10 suited or Queen 10 suited on a King high or Queen high board. Sometimes I will check to get future value and you don't need like a whole lot of protection. So I would still bet with like King 10 on a King high board on like King 7, 8, 2 flush. Here you've got King Jack on King 6, 4. I could see sometimes doing that if somebody was like a stabber. Also, too, like you're in the middle, so you don't gain as much as if you had like 2 guys in position from you that might stab. But that's my take on that. So I would probably sometimes bet, sometimes check here if it got checked to me.
Yeah, I think that makes tons of sense, especially with an aggressive reg kind of behind me. I think there's a lot more value in betting this hand on such a dry board. I'm sorry, in checking this hand on such a dry board than there is on betting. So big blind or middle blind does check. I check,
Mm-hmm.
and the main villain on the button checks back.
All right, so it gets checked through. So you check this time with a somewhat aggressive guy behind you, and it gets checked through. And of course, it's not. There's a reason why sometimes you can do this on this board. I mean, there's just not that many cards that are really bad for you. The lower the top pair, the more you actually want to bet to protect. But with a king, you're giving off like a free card at an ace, and that's pretty much it. Of course, somebody can have a pair, and they catch two outs or something like that. But okay, so the pot remains $100.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you had to say there. I think, there's a lot of information to be gained by checking, right? Like we can see what the villain on the button does, and then on the turn, if it checks through, we can see what the villain in the middle blind does. And I also think like this villain on the button never going to have any hand like kings. He's not a trapper, and I do think like even if he just has king X, right, king middle kicker or something like that, like he will be stabbing this flop. So when it checks through, I suspect he has either air or some kind of weak showdown value
Okay.
at this point.
So what's the turn?
Turn is the 3 of hearts.
All right, so the 3 of hearts comes out, king of spades, 6 of hearts, 4 of clubs, now 3 of hearts. Backdoor hearts. The king and the 4 are not hearts. Obviously, a 5 is open-ended. And so it's king, 6, 4, 3. Okay, what does the guy in the middle blind do now?
The middle blind checks.
Okay.
I go 35 into 100.
Okay, so here bet's 35 into 100. I might, I don't know if this is a thing. If I check the flop, I might go 2/3 here just because the pot is so small. There's a backdoor heart draw out there now. I don't know if there's anything here that you're getting to call for 35 that wouldn't call for, say, 65 or 70. But okay, so you bet 35. And sometimes with this small sizing, you might induce something to happen, which could be a reason to go with somewhat small sizing, but you're gonna, if somebody makes a play at you, you're gonna probably have to defend. So you bet 35, okay.
This guy definitely has post-flop moves. So I did consider the larger sizing, but I did think that it would less often cause him to kind of like spaz out a little bit and try to take an aggressive line with a hand that's maybe a draw or something like that.
All right, so you go 35.
Yep. So the button raises to 210 and the big blind folds.
So the button raises to 210. The big blind folds, and like kind of what we were talking about here, it's pretty hard. This big blind folds out, so it's back to the hero. Obviously, it's heads up. It's pretty hard as played here just to fold out now. I mean, some people will have some slow plays on, say, like if they flopped like a set of 6s or a set of 4s. You might have given him like a free card to, say, like a set of 3s, something like that didn't bet the flop. There's now backdoor hearts. If he had 5-7, I would think that that's probably a bet a lot on the flop. But so, I mean, there are some hands that beat you. If there's never any slow plays, really the only hand that beats you really here is pocket 3s. But, this whole small sizing here on turn after checking flop, I mean, obviously, I don't think we can ever fold, but it's pretty much just 100% a call. I mean, at this stacked up, you're never, you're not going to bet 3-bet, I don't think.
No. Never planning to bet 3-bet. I think that kind of defeats the purpose of hoping to induce something from the button, right? Like
Right.
The other hand I think that can come in here is 4-3 suited.
Okay. So you make the call.
I do. Yeah, I make the call, and there's 520 in the pot now.
Yep, 520 in the pot. And what is the river here?
Yeah, so the river is an interesting one. It's the ace of diamonds.
Ace of diamonds. So that is interesting because I don't think it's a great card for you in the sense that I think you were winning quite a bit on the turn against a lot of this guy's range. Now you're winning less. However, so it's not a great card for you in that sense. However, it'll get really, really interesting if you check, which is obviously going to be the play, and then this guy bets, especially if he uses somewhat polarizing sizing, because I just don't see a whole lot of raising turn and then betting like ace 5 or like ace 9 of hearts here at the end for some sort of crazy polarizing sizing. So if you take those hands out, the single paired aces, and then again, the only way that he makes a single paired ace on the river is if he's raising on the come with something like ace 5, ace 7, right? Like ace X of hearts, something like that. If you take that out of his river betting range, if he does bet, then he's really saying, okay, I've got 2 pair plus, and then we have a decision. So it's one of these things where it's not the best card for you in the deck. I think you actually lose to more hands, but you lose to more hands when it goes check, check. If he bets the river now, this will be interesting.
I expect this pot to go check, check if he pairs his ace on
Right.
the river.
Right. Exactly. So I assume you check.
I did check.
Uh-huh.
Button bet 700 into 520.
Wow. So the button bet, I mean, that's quite obviously very, very polar. 700 into 520. So here, he is definitely saying for value, he's got 2 pair plus. I don't even know if a guy takes 3-4 here for this type of sizing, to be honest with you. I mean, that's like the worst, right? 2 pair. So, and then also too, like, it's hard for him to really run into aces up a whole lot with the way that this hand played out. And the reason why I say that is because he raised the turn, which would mean that he would have had to have a single pair on the turn, raise with it, and then make aces up. And if you had like something like ace 6, ace 4, sometimes those things get bet off on the flop anyways. So it's kind of a stretch, and he doesn't have ace king. So it's really kind of a stretch to say, oh, he ran into aces up, because he would almost have to raise the turn with like ace 3, which, I mean, it's not, I suppose, like out of the realm of possibility. It's just not likely. So I would kind of be surprised if he ended up with aces up here. So now you're like, well, this sizing doesn't represent ace X. We talked about that. He doesn't really have much aces up. So now he's just like, all right, well, I've got pocket 3s, a slow played, pocket 6s or pocket 4s. And sometimes if he checked back, like, I don't know how wide he is, 5 deuce, 5 7, something like that. So it is kind of interesting when you get to the end here as played, because again, that ace is going to slow down a lot of that sort of single paired ace thing that he runs into here. And I'm trying to think here, like, he's got a set of 3s. It's rather interesting too. Like, if I had somehow like turned a set of 3s here, and then you bet 35, and then you call my raise, I don't know how many single paired aces that you really have all that much either, unless you had like the nut flush draw. So I kind of wonder if I would take this sizing, unless I was somebody that unless I thought you were going to look me up, you know, what perceives to be like in a really, really light way here. Now, if you are up against a tough player, again, not with this sizing, but if you're up against a tough player that understands the situation and can value bet like 375 with a single paired ace that they run into at the end, this becomes a much harder call. But I think this sizing just says no. I mean, it's never going to be like that. So, I mean, if you say he's like, you know, is a little bit like overly aggressive and doesn't slow play much on the, here's the thing, this is where I would look at. If he bets a lot of his draws on the flop, 5-7 would be natural one of them. If he doesn't slow play all that much, set of 6s and set of 4s, there's not a whole lot of value left, except for something like pocket 3s, or if he plays 5 deuce and then took a card and hit a gut shot, you know, on the turn.
Yeah, I agree with you. Felt like it was one of those spots where in game, I was actually able to narrow down his value to a pretty specific set of hands, right? Like, I really think that when you talked about whether or not he's taking 4-3 for this sizing, I actually believe this villain's more likely to split their sizings here on the river. So I do believe he would value bet 4-3. I don't confidently believe that they would value bet
This sizing
for this sizing on this specific river. So in game, I was sitting there and I was just thinking, like, man, like, I really feel like we've narrowed his range down to a set of 3s for value and kind of nothing else. Like, as you mentioned, I do expect him to be stabbing with all gut shots, all straight draws that are open-ended on the flop. So I don't really see him running into a straight here. Like, it was kind of an interesting and very specific spot where his value range was specifically 3 combinations of 3-3, and that kind of seemed like it.
And again, some of the comments, maybe some people weren't listening to me or just joining us. People saying ace 6. I tried to explain why I thought that was unlikely. I think for this guy to have ace king too, he would have to not 3-bet pre, right? Now, sometimes you do have flats on the button. It's a 3 blind game, so you're incentivized, and also not bet the flop and raise turn. All of those things would have to happen. And if you take a look and you say, look, he doesn't 3-bet even if he didn't 3-bet ace king like 20% of the time, how often does he not bet the flop on a king high board? Another 20%, 30%. You're in the single digits right now in terms of, so I just find it unlikely. It sounds to me like you put it together and you called, or what?
I went ahead and put in the call.
And
Villain fast rolls, which was scary, but he fast rolls 5-4 of diamonds.
5-4 of diamonds for a semi-bluff plus pair on the turn that now obviously needs to bluff at the end, he thinks. Now, let me ask you this question here too, just out of curiosity. Is your hand any different here? It seems like you might have played it very, very similar than like having like tens through king, queen. What I mean is that I don't really see much of a difference here between, say, having like 10-10 through all the way up to king, queen, the way that we sort of broke it down. And it sounds to me like if you do a fair amount of checking, you might have played that way. Maybe you don't bet as much with those hands on the turn and maybe play more like as double street bluff catchers.
Yeah, I think transparently, like my under pairs to the king are incentivized versus this exact player to check and bluff catch twice. So I think it's mostly going to be king X and aces and, like sets of kings, things like that, that I'm going to start betting on turn. But it doesn't really matter what hand we have because he's not bluffing with better than a single pair that is beaten by tens, or doesn't, that tens
Right.
loses to, right?
And just one thing to wrap this up. I mean, it's a crazy merge. If you could rightly if you're in your opponent's spot and you could rightly identify what's going on here, in the sense that I see you, like say I'm in your opponent's spot and I see you do some like checking with a lot of king X and play it this way, is maybe if you deem that like I'm an aggressive player. If I did raise turn somehow with like nut flush draw, like some sort of combo draw that I didn't bet on flop, like ace seven, I mean, a lot of that stuff might start stabbing anyways, but if I had like ace seven of hearts or something like that, and I thought that there was a fair chance you were going to call down, then you could take huge sizing with ace X of hearts. It's just not something that's done all that commonly, but it would be a hell of a value bet. But you got to be up against a special player that's willing to call you very light. Thank you very much for the call, Scott. I appreciate it.